Yo, welcome back to Street Coders. We got a good one for y'all today. CSS styling, man. We really getting through this front end development progress for real, or a little course that I'm putting on for y'all. So what we about to do today is really just hop into where we left off of last time. And so where did we leave off of? We was working on a project and we saw that the project didn't look like the website that we were creating. It had all the elements, but it didn't have that structure. So let me remind you with pulling it up real quick. So let's hop right into it. Drink of the day is some water. Drink it all actually, but get you a drink. Blow you some loud sun. Let's hop into it. Okay. So let's open up the folder that we had last time for this. So which was a HTML beginner site. So we're gonna open that folder and Visual Studio Code. So let's go to Visual Studio Code. Let's Command O for open. This is an old project that I was working on, but let's open up a new project. So we're gonna go to desktop, and then we go to not desktop. We're gonna go to documents. And then inside of documents, there's the front end work. We're gonna go into that one. And inside the front end work, there's the HTML beginner website. We're gonna open that one up. We can say open. Okay, cool. So we got our HTML beginner website open. This is what it looks like. Simple, right? It's look just like the website that we just came from, or the website that we're trying to develop. And if you don't remember what that is, let me open that up for you in Safari. What am I looking for? Wait, actually, let me do it down here. We could just look HTML, what I looked up last time. HTML, beginner website. And then it's right there. Cool. I'll drop the link in the website or in the video below. I'm most likely gonna edit this stuff out. Okay, and then we went to full screen landing, that one. And this is the website that we are trying to create, pretty much like this. We want our website to look like this, but currently our website is looking not like that. What is it looking like? Let's open it up. How do we open it up? Just double tap on the HTML file like that. And we can zoom in a little bit. You'll see our HTML file, or that our website is not looking anything like this website. I'm going to open this in Chrome so we can work on the same tools. There we go. Chrome up right here. Chrome up. See, I was installing Acquire app, but we're gonna go to our website right here. Cool. This is our website. And so this is the website we want it to look like, but obviously it doesn't look like this. Why doesn't this website look like this? It has the elements once again, but it does not have what we would call the styling. So when I say it has the elements, you can see that there's this welcome to the beach. There's the welcome to the beach right here. And then there's the lorem, and then there's the button. And that's simply here too. There's a background image that this is sitting on, and there's no background image that this one is sitting on. Also, this information here is centered in the middle of the screen. We need to go ahead and figure out how we're going to do all of that. And so obviously the way that we're going to do that is with CSS, Cascade Styling Sheets. And so CSS allows us to select different elements inside of the HTML. So when I say select different elements, what do I mean? So if we go to the HTML, this H1 tag is an HTML element. This is an element. This is this tag, the whole tag with the words and everything. This is one element on inside the HTML document. And then right underneath it, you have the P tag. this p tag is a p element. It's a HTML element. So when I say that CSS allows us to select these elements, basically it's going to say, grab me this H1, right? Grab me this H1 tag and do something to that H1 tag. You can select that H1 tag. And so what do I mean by that? So you can select this H1 tag and do something to it. So I'm going to right click. I was introducing y'all to the DevTools last time. So right click on it. And what you will be introduced to on the side, on the DevTools over here is, let me show you. What you'll be introduced to is the HTML for this web page. And so let's take a look at this HTML. You can start at the doc type equals HTML. Then you have the HTML element tag. This is where the HTML starts. You got the head, then the body, and then the header. Okay, we're doing a header. So if we come back over to our code and we try to check what we're doing, this is kind of like the header right here. I put it inside of a div. This is where all the code show up. This div is supposed to be the header. So if we come back over to the header and we look at it, the header has the background image, it has the H1 tag, the Lorem Ipsum in the middle, and then the button. So let's open up this header tag and let's see what's inside of it. Inside you will see that there is, I wonder why I can't make it any bigger. Inside you'll see, let me see if I put it on the bottom, will it be better? Put this on the bottom. Where we put it on the bottom at? That's not it. Elements. There we go. Nope. There we go. Yep, put it on the bottom. Okay. Actually don't like it on the bottom. Put it back on the side. Okay, so what we will see, we can grab this H1 element, like here we go. So we have this header element, and this header element is all of the hero section, because if you hover over it, you'll see that the other parts aren't being highlighted. When we hover over those other parts, you'll see that they are being highlighted. So this header section is all of this part up here, which is the same for ours at this div. Makes sense. And so when we come back over and we look at the header section, you can see similar things with the header section. It's getting a little warm. I'm gonna take this jacket off. You can see similar things in the header section. What you will see is that H1 tag that we have already in our code. You will see this H1 tag that we have, H1, and then you will also see that P tag, and then you'll see this A tag. Okay, so they used H1P and A tag. And if we look at ours, we use the H1P and a button tag. They also use the header tag here instead of a div tag. Okay, so what does all of this mean specifically? So this is more so semantic HTML, and so semantic HTML, when you look at it, this header tag, everything in HTML is kind of like a box, and I'm gonna get to that in a second. And so this header tag is actually the same as this div tag, and a div tag is just a division. It creates like a grouping, and then so if you look at this this header tag, you'll see that this is a grouping, and it's the grouping for the header, and all of the contents inside of the header are inside of this header tag, in between the opening one here and then the closing one there. That's where all of the contents for that section go. And so before we were just using divs, and so people would say div, and then the thing is they would just add a class here. Let's say class equal, and then we would say class is header. And so then we would say this is the header class and whatnot. And then we would create other divs, let's say div, and then we would give it a class like main section or something like this. And then it'll go like that. And we can go on and so forth with all the divs. But then semantic HTML came around and said, you know, we don't have to do div, header, if we know that this part is going to be the header, let's make it more readable. That's what semantic HTML came around and did. It made things more readable. So honestly, this header is a div underneath the hood, but now it's just saying header, and we know that this is at the beginning. And then after the header, you can have your sections, and then you give your sections different like classes and whatnot, or IDs based on what the section says. But this section is just another way of saying div as well, you know. So at the end of the day, you'll see that we can do similar things with the HTML. They don't have to be the same. But if we want to make ours the same, we could update this one to say header, and then this will say header. As for the button, they have they're using a tag, and an a tag has that href, and it'll automatically go to another web page if so. But we can use a button, and we can do the same thing with the button. So it really doesn't matter if we're going to use the a tag or the button tag, which you'll see soon. And it didn't matter if we use the header tag or or it didn't matter if we use the a tag. Or it didn't matter if we use the div tag or the header tag. So coming back here, let's take a look. Like I said, we can select elements. So if we click on one of these HTML elements on the right-hand side, inside the inspector tools, what you will see is that we are able to, once again, select these elements, and you will be able to see the CSS that's written for these this element. This is the styling for this element. And so how do I know that this is the styling for this element? Well, I know CSS selectors. And remember, we did a whole video on CSS selectors. And so this CSS selector says there's a class called showcase, or there's an ID called showcase, and ID equals showcase. So it's selecting this header element, ID equals showcase. But if you look, there's a space, and then that space says, and then there's an element right underneath, or there's an element underneath that's an H1. So give me the H1 that's underneath the showcase ID. So then it selects this H1 element. And now what we can do that this H1 element is selected is give it some styling. And so the styling it gave it was 50 pixels and line height. This is the styling it gave it. As you can see, there's more styling that happens as well. And so this styling, this is the star styling. It says everything. Star means all. So all the styling is going to have a margin of 0 and a padding of 0. And then there's the styling for the H1. There's like this basic styling that people can apply to their H1 elements, P elements and whatnot. You don't have to, but they do. And some browsers already do it for you. And so this is things that we can't really change. But here, this is things that we can change. And when I say we can change, like look what happens when I change these values to something bigger or something smaller just by using the arrow up and down key. I'm able to select the HTML elements in real time and change their CSS properties in real time and see them right here in real time and play with them. So this is honestly how I develop websites. And so what I do is I come here and I say this header, it has an ID as showcase. So if I want to be able to copy this HTML, or if I want to be able to copy this CSS, what I would do is just come here and look at the showcase class. I'll look at this showcase element and I say, you know what? I'm going to create an ID equals showcase. Like that. So I got my ID equals showcase, and then I see that showcase has some basic styling on it right here. So now I can take this styling and I can add it to my CSS code. But as you can see, we don't have any CSS code here. So what we're going to do is create a CSS file so that we can link it to our HTML. And so the way that we create our CSS file is typically people put their CSS files in an asset folder because you can create multiple CSS files for one project. And so assets are something that doesn't really change over time. And if you think about it, your CSS code doesn't really change. You write it one time and it pretty much stays the same. That's a static thing. Or my bad, I just explained static. I meant assets. Assets are things that you add into the project. And if you think about styling, styling is something you're going to add onto your into your HTML. So this is an asset. So we usually create an asset file or folder, and then inside that asset folder we create a CSS folder, and then inside that CSS folder we can call this one styles.css. And so another folder that we can have inside the asset folder, as you can see later on, is images. And so you'll have like an images folder for any images you want to link into your project. And then you'll have your CSS folder where these are CSS selectors, and we are doing the things with the selectors, and we are styling the elements. So what selector do we need? We need the showcase selector. And so the showcase selector, the way that we can grab this header with the showcase, or this header element with the showcase ID, is by using a hashtag, and it says showcase. So in order to grab IDs, we use hashtags. And so this showcase selector says that there is a background image, and this is the URL for the background image. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and copy that background image and the URL and save it just like that. So now I just added a background image to the showcase selector, and the showcase selector is attached to the header element. And so if I come back to my HTML, let's save this. And then, oops, not save. Let's refresh this. And let's also open up the DevTools, inspect. There we go. Open up the DevTools like that. Cool. And let's also open this CSS styling, and what we'll see is we got the head, and then we got the body. We want this header element. Okay, cool. So this header element, has an ID showcase, and as you can see, this header element is like this. And let's actually take a look at the header element. So as you can see, when I'm highlighting this header element, on the left hand side, there's blue that highlights the element. And so if we come over here and look, you can see that this blue, this is this box. And I was telling you that all the HTML elements are boxes. And so you can literally think of each HTML as a box. Each one has a box like structure when you click on them. And the header has one, and then you can think of that header as a box that has the H1 box inside of it, the P box inside of it, and the button box inside of it. So the header element is almost like a container, if you will. And so when I click on it, the header element, it shows me the actual element. But then there's also padding we can add onto that element. And so what I mean by that, here we have element.style. What does element.style mean? It says this element. Each one of these have an element.style. See, I can click here. There's an element.style. I can click here. There's also an element.style. So each HTML element has a style property. That's what it's called, a property, an attribute. So the style attribute is how we style it. It's the CSS. And so we can just add styling right here in real time. And so what we're going to do is add some styling to the header element. As you can see, the header element isn't the full height of the screen. So let's give it the full height of the screen. We'll say a height is 100 VH. And 100 VH just stands for viewport height. There's a viewport width, and 100 will it's kind of like saying 100%. It's not really like work like that, but you can kind of take it like that. If you put 50, it's kind of like 50%, as you can see. Let me show you. So 100 went all the way, 50 went this way. So it's kind of like 50%, but it don't work all the way like that. And so with the width, you'll say VW for viewport width. But you can see we can select elements and we can change their CSS in real time like that. And so we can do that inside the browser, but we can also do this inside the inside the CSS. The way that we do it inside the CSS is that we'll get access to this ID right here. We'll get access to the ID equals showcase inside of the CSS file. And so what I mean by that, we have access to this ID equals showcase, and we put a background image on it. And so actually so we put a background image on it. But now we need to link this CSS file to our HTML. And so the way that we link the CSS file into the HTML is through the header tag. This goes inside of the header tag, and you put a link, and you'll say CSS. And Visual Studio Code helps you out a lot. So use the shortcuts, say link, scroll down to the CSS one, and say click it. And so what this does, it links. The relationship is a style sheet, and the href. This is the URL to your CSS style sheet. And so our CSS style sheet lives at // / is our current working directory. It's where this current file is. So if I say / anywhere, it comes to this file. So the index.html file is going to come here and say, which directory are you in? And so you come over here. The index.html file is in the root directory. It's in the root directory. So it says / start me in the root directory, and there's an assets folder in the root directory, and then there's a styles.css file there. And I gotta update this to say assets. And so now if I click on this, it should take me to the CSS file right here. So, oh wait, oops, just created that CSS file. Move the trash. What we actually want to do, created the wrong one, is assets and /CSS /style sheets. And now when we click on it, it should take us to the file. So now we have successfully linked it. So the way that we link is link, and we use a link tag in we use a link tag in the in the header, and then we set the relationship to style sheet, and then we give it an href, the URL to the file. And now we can save it. Let's come back over here and refresh. So we have showcase. ID equals showcase is the header, and we set a background image, but it doesn't look like, or the image loaded successfully, but it doesn't look like it was on the background or it got hit on the showcase. So let's see why. My idea is that it's the height. So let's say the height is 100 VH, and as you can see, you can kind of see the image is background. So now we could just come back to the styles.css and add height is 100 VH. I'm going to teach you all of these different CSS properties pretty soon, but I'm just showing you how we're going to start making this. And so let's hover over this. Let's hover over this header. And so let's click on the header, and you see the header doesn't really take up the full page. Like you see behind, like the blue should really go the full page. And what do I mean by that? If I come here, I click this header, you see how the blue goes all the way to the top and the bottom, and then there's green on the sides. Here, ours is white. The white means that is not our element. The green, once again, if you remember the box model, the green is our element. Like the green is the padding on the element, and the border is outside the element. So the padding has to be inside the element, if you will. So the green is the element. So why is this element the full screen and ours isn't the full screen here? And so the reason is this, like, each browser has its own like CSS processing before you start making a website. So basically it adds its own CSS on top of it. And so what we typically do as developers is called CSS resets. We add a CSS reset, which sets all our basic properties back to 0, our padding, our margins, and all of that. And so you don't really got to remember all of that. Just remember to do a CSS reset. And so what I do is Google CSS reset, literally like this. And what you'll see is CSS tools, reset CSS. And this is just a basic file. Let me zoom in. This is just a basic file that grabs all the elements, like I showed you, and puts the margin, padding, border, font size, all of that to 0. Then it also put the body, the line height at 0, just different stuff, like basic list styling, none, body quote. So this is like, it resets pretty much to all basic CSS. And so what I'll do is typically grab this right here, and then I'll come over to my CSS file, and I'll add it to the top. And I'll just add CSS reset, like that. Okay, so now let's see what that makes our website looks like. So when we hover over it, full page. But the thing is, our H1 element became like, it literally looks like a P element now. I don't really like that. So what we can do is we could actually go update. We could actually update the font size for these elements for like the H1 and the P and whatnot. And so I don't want my H1s to be I don't want my H1s or any of my headers to be affected by the CSS reset. So I go there and I remove it. So now if I refresh, now you see my H1 isn't affected. And I can hover over my H1, you see H1, you see the P. But what I do not want, now think about it, what I do not want is any margin on my H1 or any of those. So what I would do is come here, like this, and I'll say margin 0. And you can update your own, pretty much, you can update your own CSS reset based on what you want. And so I updated mine, so now my margin is 0, and now I have free range to clean up everything I want to clean up. Okay, so we about to hop into Flexbox real quick. And so what is Flexbox? Well, first we gotta get into CSS positioning. So we really, well, first, let's look at this background image. This background image is not what it's supposed to be looking like. Let's go back over here. The background image needs to be looking like this, but ours looks like this. And the reason it looks like this is because we didn't really give the background image any direction. Like, what do I mean by that? If you look over here at the showcase, you will see that at the showcase ID, you'll see that it has background image, but then it also has background size and background position and height, display flex, and all the other stuff. But most of the things for the background is the background position and the background size. We don't have those. The background position and background size here is cover and center. So I want that on mine. Basically it's saying I want my background picture to cover the entire area, and this area is 100 VH, and it want it to be centered. So I'm going to say the same thing for me, for my showcase one right here. I can say the same thing. All I did was pretty much copy the background size cover and the background position center. I copied that right over from here, and I added it right here. So now if I save and I come here and I refresh, okay, so now our image is the same. Our image is sitting in the same place, but we don't have our words in the same place. Let's get our words down here. So how are we going to get our words down here? This is more so CSS positioning. And so I'm going to change gears real quick and really explain what's going on here. First, let's take a look at the HTML though. In the HTML, you'll see that there's the header. And once again, if you think of CSS or the HTML elements as a box, you'll see that the header is a container for the H1, the P, and the A tag. And so as a container, we can do certain things. Or so if you start thinking of containers, if you think of the header as containers, then you could think of these elements as items. And so that is key for understanding CSS positioning when it comes to Flexbox, because we can really move any item all over the screen depending on if it's an item or if it's a container. And that's really how we build out really complicated UIs with containers and items. And that's pretty much how you got to start thinking. I was saying the division makes a group. The div will make a group. Remember, a header is just a div again. So the div will make a grouping. And so you can think of that grouping, that div that's making a grouping, as the container. Then you can think of the things that's inside of that grouping as the items. So let's get a little bit deeper into that whole concept of container and items. And so once again, this is kind of like how our HTML is structured right now. We have the div, we have the header. And then inside the header, we have the, what do we have inside the header? We have the H1 tag. Then we got the P tag. Then we got a button tag. And then we close out the header like that. Right? Cool. So this is the HTML but when I see that HTML, what I see in my head is this. This header is a container like this. This is the header. And inside the header, I have an H1 element. I have a P element. And I have a button element. Oops. And I have a button element. So, what's the importance of this? Well, once again, this is synonymous to container. Why is it synonymous to container? Because it's literally containing 1, 2, and 3. It's grouping them all together. And so those things, once again, these are all called items. And so when we think of a web page in different sections, we think of them as containers and items. And then we can scroll back over to, we can scroll back over to the web page, and you'll see this is the container. And then inside the container, we have our 3 little items. And so with Flex, when I'm referring to CSS styling and positioning, I'm kind of thinking about how can we get these, how do they get their words down here in the middle like this? When I look at my example, ours is all the way up here. And so this made me think of Flexbox and positioning. And back in the day, people struggled a lot. People still struggle now to position their CSS elements. And the reason they're struggling so much is because they don't really understand the system of containers and items. And so when we start thinking in containers and items, it becomes a way bit easier to understand what's going on. And so there's this concept called Flexbox, and this is CSS, and this is a way for us to position elements on a web page. So it uses, if you think of a web page looking like this, it uses the concepts of rows and columns. So let's see, what do I mean by that? So if this is the overall web page, this outline right here, if this is the overall web page, then we can think, or it just went away. So if that's the overall web page, then we can think of this specific part right here as a row. And this row is a container. And so inside this row, we have access to move things certain ways or move items certain ways. We can add items into this row like this. And these items, we can position them evenly inside the row so that they have even spacing. We can center them in the row so that if it's only like 3 of them, that they are centered right in the middle and not on the other side of the row. We can also take these 3 and center them, and we can align them to the front like this and leave all this other space right here. We could also align them over here so that they're not starting at the beginning, but they're starting at the end. These are all properties of Flexbox. And Flexbox builds off of the idea of containers plus items. And so these are your items, the things that you're putting inside the container. And the outer div is the container. And so the container can either be a horizontal container like this one, where I was telling you about rows, or it could be a vertical container. Let's say something like this. And now we have multiple rows in this vertical container, but just one column. And each of these rows is an item. This is an item. So what do I mean by item? Each of these rows is an item pretty much. This is an HTML element in each one of these rows. So you can think of, and if we're looking at our project, you can think of the H1 is right here, the P is right here, the button's right here. And you can make the column 100% like this, right? And now we got a H1 element, and the H1 element can expand the whole column. The P can expand the whole column, and the button can expand the whole column. And you have now aligned now you have your H1 right here, your P, and your button. So what if, though, this was the height of the section that we have the button in? So let me clean this up a little bit. What do I mean by that? What if that's the height? So we have the H1 here, we have the H1 here, the P here, and the button here. But we have all this space down here. Well, we can actually align these items center in the column, just like we can align the row center. We can also align them to start down here, or we can align them to start up here as they already defaulted are. We have access to aligning these elements like this. And the thing is, we can nest containers inside of elements. And so this button tag, what if this wasn't a button tag? What if this was a div itself? And then we turn this div into a container, right? So now, instead of the div being, instead of just having row or just having column, because remember, this is in the columns, because each one of these are the full row. So this is just one column. So this is just one column so far. But if we nest a div inside of it, we can have a div nested inside that we can make rows now. So this specific row in the column is a container that has 3 different columns inside of it. And so you can start seeing how web pages now can get built, and then you can put an icon here. Let's say you put some words here, and then you put an image here. You can start seeing how the web pages are starting to get built out now. And so we literally look at web pages like this. And this whole concept is called like Flexbox. And so quick overview of Flexbox will run like this. You have your properties, and the properties is display. In order to create a container for Flexbox, you need to say display flex on the actual element. And so I'm gonna hop back into the code and show you that. And so let's see what we're trying to do. We're trying to move these elements to the center. And so if we kind of think about what I was just explaining with Flexbox or with HTML, if header is our container is here. We have the H1 element, the P element, and the button element. But the thing is, these aren't centered. And the way that we need to center them is that we need to add these properties onto the container. The properties, when I was telling you could put we can put the items in the middle and we can put them on the side. Well, we don't add that on the items individually. We actually add that to the container. What do I mean by that? Let me show you. We don't add that to the items individually. So if you come back here, we wouldn't add to this item right here be in the middle. What we would do is come to this overall container right here, and what we will say is when items are added to this container, put them in the middle. So what you're doing is you're actually configuring the container to put all of its items in the middle rather than telling each item to go to the middle of the container. And that's important. And so if we hop back over to the code and we're looking at Visual Studio Code, you'll see, or if we look at here, we see that this isn't a Flex container yet, and I'll show you how to make it a Flex container. We come to our showcase. You'll see, let's say, the way that we make it a Flex container is by saying display equals flex, like that. And so we come back over here and we refresh it. What you will see is that that column, how I told you it becomes one row when I showed you you can have one row or you can have multiple columns. Well, what happens is when you make display flex on a container, it will automatically turn them into one row, multiple columns. And so this is a column, this is a column, this is a column, but they all extend a full row. And so we don't want that. We want them to stack up on each other. And so that means we'll have one column, but multiple rows. See, here is one row, but multiple columns. We want one column, multiple rows for this container. And so the way that we do that is we have to tell it the flex direction. And the default flex direction is row, but we want flex direction column. So we say flex direction, and it'll turn into a column like that. And now we have it in the column. But next we want to center these elements. So how do we center these elements? Well, there's this property called justify. So when there's a property called align items, and align items will center, if you say it like that, align items will center the elements vertically. It's going to center the elements vertically if the flex direction is column. So what do I mean by that? Or I say vertically, it's going to center the elements horizontally if the flex direction is column. So taking a look, these elements are centered vertically or horizontally, and now we can center them horizontally with justify content. Center like that. Okay, So now it's just for the context center, and we centered it right in the middle. Now these two are flipped. So remember, this is for horizontal aligning, and this is for vertical aligning if the flex direction is column. But if the flex direction is row, then this switch to vertical aligning and this switch to horizontal aligning. That's all you got to remember, but we'll keep this on column like that. Okay, and if we take a look at our code, you'll see that we're actually not, like, we're looking at our website, you'll see that our website is coming right along. Actually, we're almost done. Let's finish out this header section. We call it quits for this video. So what's next for the header? Looking at the header, we'll see that there's this green around it. And so what is this green? This green is padding. This is what padding is it's it gives it some cushion on the outside. So basically it's just saying these elements aren't going to go any further than this wall, and they're not going to start any closer, they're not going to start before this wall. So it's like little gutters, if you will, how you can contain your element inside. It's like containing the data inside the element, because even the padding is actually calculated inside the element width and whatnot. And so you want to just know how much padding you're using. You'll start to see when to use padding and when not to use padding. And padding is kind of confusing with margin because it's almost the same thing, but padding actually squeezes the element together while margin actually moves the element. And we'll get to that in a little bit different videos. But just for now, understanding padding and that we need, and let's just add the same amount of padding that they have. And so what I would do is just come here and just copy the padding. Let's see, I do 020. I'll come Control C or Command C. And I'll come here, paste it, Command V. Now we should have some padding. There we go. Got some padding on ours. Yep, looking good. Okay, and then now what else do they have? They got text align center. So that's going to align their text to the center, make everything centered. So even this one will be centered. So let's add that to text align center. Cool, starting to look good, Let's look at theirs, text align center, cool. Align item center. You'll see that they had an align item, justify content center. They even got the flex just like us, and then they got the direction center. Yeah, ours looking just like theirs. We don't even have to copy it all. Okay, cool. So that's on the showcase. That looks good. So now we're almost done. So let's go. So we did everything that we needed to do for the header element. As you can see, our HTML looking very similar to their HTML. And our header section is our header container looks just like theirs. We have a background image on our header container, and we put everything in the middle. We center everything horizontally, and we centered it vertically in the middle. And then we have our three elements. We created our header element. Now we can go inside to each element inside the header element and see if they have any styling specific. So let's go here to the H1. And you'll see that there's a font size 50 and a line height of 1.2. So let me show you what I just end up doing is I say, okay, so that's the showcase H1. So what I'm going to go do is say, come here, hashtag showcase, and go H1. And what I'm going to do is just paste that styling that I picked up from that web page. And now we got, okay, my H1 looks like their H1. And I'm more zoomed in over here. So I can zoom out a little bit. I think it's more like this. Oops, don't know what the fuck just happened. Like that. Okay, cool. So, and I'm probably using a different font family. Yeah, let's see. Font family is, which one are they using? Havelica, Arial, what we using for our font family. Over here. Yeah, we ain't even using it. So let's go copy that font family over. We'll do this. And copy that to the H1. Let's see. Yep, starting to look just like it now. Okay, and then let's see, we got a color. Oh, they put that on the body. So let's just go ahead and add that to the body. See, we could add this straight to the body right here. So what we can do then is just go, so that we don't have to do it on every element, just add it to the body, would be body. All right, and I gotta move that CSS reset body, and then we go like that. And that puts that on the body. And I could move this up here. This is a CSS reset. And there we go. And now, all the font family and the colors on the body is the same. Cool. We is working. We almost there. Okay. So what is left? The P tag. Let's clap on the P tag. It has a font size of 20 pixels. So another thing I like to do is if I know like showcase P and I got to showcase P like that, what I just do is just copy the whole element over, and I'll come over here and I'll go showcase P like that, showcase P. Now my P is the same size, and then let's see, do I have any line height or margin? Nope. Text align, cool. And then we're gonna go and check out the A tag, and A tag got all that other stuff on it. But what we do know is that we need a font size. See, their A tag is hashtag case.button, but ours is gonna be actually hashtag showcase. And it's not going to be dot button, it's just going to be button, because we actually have a button. The dot button is the button class. Button is saying we got a button. Okay. And then we got text decoration is none. Color. Let's get the color. Let's get the border. Let's get the padding. Let's get the border radius and the margin top. Cool. Let's get all of those. Copy them over and paste them. Wow, look almost exactly the same. So their background, they don't have background color, so let's put background color. Some things you're gonna have to do. See, I'm using a button. Button automatically got a background color, so we gotta turn it to transparent. A tag don't got transparent. Okay, and then on hover, we want it to go to on hover, we want it to be that orange color. So we'll say button and we'll say hover like that. And it says whenever we hover over it. So if you hover over this one, it turns, the background color turns orange, and then the text of the font text turns white. If we hover over ours, nothing happens. We need to do the same thing. So we say color will be white, right? White, and then background color will turn hashtag 992. No, cool. Oh wait, no, 926 239. No, cool. That's that. Let's check ours out. Dang, you're looking good. Also, I see when we hover over this one, it turns to a pointer, or the cursor turns into a pointer. So let's go cursor and turn it to a pointer. And what I mean by that is, if you take a look, if I hover over this, nothing happens, or the pointer doesn't change. If I hover over this one, the pointer turns to a little finger. So when I changed it, I updated it, and now ours turns to a finger too. Let's take a look at that website. This website, minus it. They look very, very similar. Almost done. All right, so we're gonna end it out on this. We're gonna end this video out right here, and then we'll finish out the rest of the CSS on this webpage. We'll make the rest of this webpage down there in the next video. But we're almost there. making it, as you can see, it's not too complicated either. And then I'll get you hip on actual CSS properties. Right now, I'm just showing you how to actually hop in and get this stuff done. So that's pretty much it. And so now you kind of you have the basic HTML, CSS like knowledge, how to really just go go find a basic web page, put the elements on, think of the elements as boxes, use the CSS reset to reset everything, then just start containerizing everything and using Flex. All you need to know for Flex is to center it is justify content, center, and just and align content center to center everything. But you know Flexbox, and you can go from Flexbox, knowing the basics of Flexbox, and go dive a little deeper and see what it's all about, these containers and items. You understand containers and items, you're going to go very, very far. So what's next? What's next is, I said let's see here because I didn't know where we was going to end at. But what's next is more Flexbox, like more CSS styling. CSS styling. More CSS, I would say positioning is where we're heading to next. CSS positioning, more CSS positioning with Flexbox, getting more familiar with that, and getting more familiar with CSS selectors and their properties on the selectors. So, like always, follow me, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll see y'all in the next video. We'll get down. All right, peace.